We're back here on Post Wrestling going into a huge weekend in Montreal. And as Wei Ting told me, there was no person better suited for us to bring on this week than the man himself, the mayor of Montreal, the emperor of Electric Avenue, Pat Laprade, who is with us, noted historian, author, media mogul himself, and the man that, I mean, with all due respect to our subject matter today, the real king of Montreal wrestling himself, Pat
My
Laprade.
gosh, what an introduction. I mean, remind me to send you a PayPal or something because, geez. Thank you, John. Happy to be back on the show.
Well, I really wanted to have you on this week because this is one where, as soon as this was announced for Montreal and you saw where the story was going with the bloodline, it just suddenly became a destination event that you knew this was going to be a really big show. And they're putting together, to me, the ultimate main event for the market, but not specifically to the market. This has worldwide interest with the intrigue of the bloodline and just days out from Elimination Chamber, Pat. I mean, you have covered it all. I mean, tell me a bit about just the buzz you sense within the city. Like, this feels like this is going to be a major milestone in Montreal history.
This actually feels like our own version of WrestleMania. And I want to explain myself here because first of all, there's two shows in 2 nights. So that's that. Uh, uh, Thursday night, The Undertaker was in town for his show, for his One Dead Man show. There's a superstore downtown, a huge superstore. I was there, and I went there. There's a wide varieties of T-shirts and hockey jerseys. I tweeted about it. I mean, they're really, really done it all with this pay-per-view, this PLE. And there's like a lot of T-shirts in collaboration with the Montreal Canadiens as well. So that's a huge thing.
Very smart tie-in that they've been doing in a lot of markets, but this like those shirts are going to go like they're pairing up Owens and Zayn with Montreal Canadiens
Yeah.
merchandise. I mean, it's a brilliant marketing idea.
There's one that says honorary ab, because the Montreal Canadiens are nicknamed the Abs. So I mean, that's just awesome. So it really feels like something that on a different scale, but at the same time, it does feel like there's like events for like 3 nights in a row, a superstore downtown. This is the kind of things that you see on a big WrestleMania weekend. So it really feels like our own version of it, and it's definitely the biggest wrestling weekend in town in I want to say 25 years since the screw job. And actually they are selling a T-shirt of the Survivor Series of 97. I didn't see any from Breaking Point though, but of 2009. But yeah.
Much like the theme of Breaking Point, I'm ready to submit to Survivor Series 97 and constantly bringing us back to that event. But, I would argue that certainly within the industry going into that Survivor Series, there was all the speculation with Brett. But I feel like just from a pure promotional standpoint, like I feel this has got to be among the biggest shows of even going beyond 97. If you had to dial things back, like this is going to be, it's going to be completely sold out at the Bell Center. If we're putting this in a different generation in a Jerry Park, Pat, I mean, what do you think would have been like the upper bound limit of what this show could draw with the hometown hero going for the WWE Championship? And I think the worldwide audience is going to get a sense of just how important that babyface in a market like Montreal means. That I don't know if people in like the US even understand that importance.
Oh, no one understands that besides people in the province of Quebec, because we have, and you know that, John, we have a different relation with our stars, whether it's in wrestling or in any other form of sports or entertainment. We really, really are behind people representing province of Quebec and Montrealers and all that. So you've been to a few UFC in Montreal when George St. Pierre was here, especially the night he won the belt. I mean, that was one of the loudest reaction I've ever heard, loudest pop I ever heard in an arena. So I don't want to say that it's going to be louder than GSP, but it certainly going to be along those lines. I'm expecting a really, really, really huge pop for Sami, and it's just amazing that, I mean, there's both Kevin and Sami, right? I mean, you cannot talk about one without naming the other. And this weekend is all about Sami. He's the man of the hour, and I'm so happy for him because um, Kevin has been maybe a little bit more known in Quebec because of I'm guessing the Universal Championship that he won a few years ago. He did a few more media because of that. So it's a name that Quebecers know maybe a little better than Sami Zayn, and Sami Zayn doesn't really sound French Canadian at all. So. Um, but now it's really like people are discovering who Sami Zayn is. It's really his weekend. And if you look at how they book stuff, Kevin Owens is nowhere to be seen. It's really all the lights on Sami. He was at a Montreal Canadian game earlier this week. It's his weekend. He's everywhere. There was a huge lineup for him at the Superstore downtown on Thursday. This is just amazing what they did, and especially with the storyline of probably one of the best storylines WWE did in a very long time.
Yeah, if you're going to go back to 97, it's really reminiscent of that Canadian Stampede show and just like the Hearts back home in Calgary, very similar feel. I want to go back to the beginning and how early a young Sami Zayn was on your radar. And did you get to experience Stevie McFly?
Oh, of course. I have seen Sami's second match ever. So I wasn't there for his very first match. Not a lot of people was there actually. Maybe I don't know, a few dozens. But on his second match ever, it was at FLQ from a promotion ran by Paul Leduc, the all-time great Paul Leduc, and he was actually Stevie McFly. He was wrestling with his bowling shoes on at the time. Everyone was laughing at that. Everyone was laughing because, here comes this skinny guy, red hair guy with his bowling shoes, who you could see was athletic and everything. But at the time, we didn't really know what he would become. If I want to compare that to a young Kevin Steen, it was totally different because Kevin, we knew from the start that he had something special. Sami, it was different. It was really when El Generico began to click that we put two and two together. We're like, okay, he's athletic, he's awesome in the ring, and now he has the gimmick to make waves and go somewhere. I was there too. I was there for his very first El Generico match. And it's funny because a friend of him and I, he's a teacher, but he used to be a wrestler. And he texted me yesterday and he said, hey, you know what? Sami and two other people from WWE will be coming to my school by the end of the week to talk with the children and everything. He said, how crazy is that? I said, geez,
wow.
He was the very first guy to wrestle El Generico. It was the El Generico gimmick was for this wrestler. He was named TNT. The local wrestler, his name was TNT. He was kind of an old school guy, and the gimmick of El Generico was created to give him an opponent that was totally different than he usually faced. It was just supposed to be one night. There was nothing like planned in advance. He had a cape. Sami had the cape from another wrestler named Steve Roids. And yes, the name Roids was because of what you think. And Lufisto was backstage, and she wrote like Ole on his chest, on his belly or something, on his back. It was a group effort. This El Generico was not meant to happen. And it happened, and Sami improvised with the Ole and all that, and it really clicked. And here we are 20 years later with him main eventing the Bell Center.
And did something click that led to him continuing with Generico? Why did he continue with it?
He tried so hard to have any other gimmick than El Generico. He didn't want to be El Generico. He kept doing Stevie McFly in some other promotions. At one point, he was named Big Larry. So there were like a trio of wrestlers. There was, I don't know if you remember, a guy named Beef Wellington. He,
Yes.
he, he worked CZW and Jersey all throughout the time. So Beef was, oh my gosh, was Dollar Bill. Sammy was Big Larry, and there was a French guy who was named French Fry, not fries, Fry. And they were like hip hop guys, or trying to be three white dudes, trying to be cool and hip, and coming to big gangster music and all that. It's very close to what Sammy did when he was trying to be friends with the Bloodline. I mean, that was the closest thing that he ever did to a Big Larry gimmick. So he tried different things, but at one point there were too many requests for El Generico, and he had started doing it in the States and all that. And I mean, before he got to WWE, he had wrestled in El Generico in 29 different countries. That's amazing when you think about it. So he really fought for against it, but at one point he just realized, okay, maybe I have something here that I should keep going with, and I think he took the right decision there.
Yeah, and it's that probably the earliest example of maybe taking something that's not his first choice, but going forward with, how can I make this the best thing it can be? And on the surface, you hear the name El Generico, like it sounds like a terrible name, and yet it's for those that followed his career, like the name did not prohibit him from having great success, and working under the mask was probably something that had great effect. Like later on, that he has even talked about, like all wrestlers should experience that, working underneath a mask.
Yeah, I remember there was one guy who told me, a worker in Quebec, who said that Generico didn't have any charisma, and that's why he was wrestling under a hood. And I was like, man, you got to be kidding me. I mean, you just don't know the guy. And my gosh, did he prove that guy wrong ever since, right? I mean, he really embraced the gimmick. When he accepted it, he really embraced it, in the sense that he talked to fans with a broken English, throwing a few Spanish words here and there. And that whole Tijuana thing, and going back there for to run orphans, and to this day, and this is kind of amazing, but to this day you will never hear Sami Zayn say that he was El Generico.
He's been extremely.
He will talk about him being in Ring of Honor, and him being on the Indies, and he will talk about all of that without ever saying I was El Generico. And I remember him telling me when he first got to WWE that he wanted to do that because he gave me permission to say he was El Generico. He said, "You can say whatever you want, Pat, but I will never ever admit that I was El Generico." And his train of thoughts was, if I ever go back to the Indies, I can always use that and make something out of it, and bring back Generico. I didn't think, and we first had that talk in 2013, right? I didn't think that he was still gonna be in WWE 10 years later. I don't know. I mean, 10 years is a long career, John, in WWE, right? So I don't know how much he knew he was going to be there 10 years later. So his thinking was like, well, if I'm only here for 4 or 5 years and go back to the Indies, I can always use that. Now, I don't know if it would be the same thing, and who knows if we'll ever go back to the Indies, So, but probably he would need to be unmasked, but he could do both gimmicks if he ever need to. But yeah, so it's just funny how he. I mean, even Kevin Owens, embraced that too. When I talked to Kevin for a formal interview on TVA Sports, and we asked him what happened with El Generico, he simply said, "You didn't know? He died." I said, "What? What?" So it's just like a funny thing now to talk about that. But
Steve Austin also learned about this through Kevin Owens as well. A great moment if you go back to an old interview with Kevin Steen and Steve Austin, where Steve Austin learned about how young this guy called it a career way back in El Generico. But on the subject of Steen, so it's about a year and a half that they first crossed paths. And is this when Steen is still with Jacques, or is this when he's sort of made the separation from Jacques around 2003-ish?
He was still for Jacques, but Jacques gave his students permission to go and wrestle elsewhere. I want to say in the summer of 2003.
Okay.
And that's when Kevin started working IWS. He started in September of 2003, so that's why that's when he started befriending Sami, and it's so hard for me to call him Sami, by the way, because you know his real name is Rami, and it's so close to Sami. I never call him Sami, but anyways, so it's, I mean, that's when he had his first match with him. I want to say in the fall of 2003, I think their first match was. I remember there was a big three-way between him, Generico, and PCO in IWS. That was like match of the year in Quebec. And but then Jacques had a show in December of 2003, and he asked his students to come back for him and to stop wrestling elsewhere. But Kevin wanted to do both, and that's when the split with Jacques happened. And there was, at the time, there was like, Jacques was promising two of his students to get a dark match next time WB was going to be in town. It actually happened, but I mean, for whatever reasons, those, the two guys who did that match never left the indie scene, and Kevin just started working the indies in the US, and the rest is history. But it was Kevin had started in the year 2000, I believe. So he was 3 years in when he started doing IWS, and Sami had started in 2002. So he was about a year and a half in when he met Kevin.
And this is where, they're certainly gaining some buzz in Quebec, but it's would you say it's the PWG booking that suddenly you're starting to see their names pop up in newsletters, or that what was that considered the big break for them, or is that further down with Ring of Honor, you would say?
Depending on what you call being recognized and all that, Meltzer probably started talking about them with Ring of Honor because he wasn't going to PWG at the time.
Yeah.
But in Quebec, it's really a match. I mean, we knew Kevin was special even when he was working for Jacques. They were like, the people who were covering Jacques was telling the people who weren't. There was just one name that they were mentioning us, and it was Kevin Steen. And he had a few matches before 2004 that really made the people were like, oh wow, okay, he is something. But the first big match he had was in 2004 in Quebec City for EWR, and it was against Christopher Daniels. Mm-hmm. You got to understand that at the time the territory wasn't really open. People workers in Quebec didn't really go and work in the US. There were like no big indie stars coming to Montreal either. I mean, except for a short association between CZW and IWS at the time that my gosh, Lobo and Justice Payne were working there, so it wasn't the same thing as a Christopher Daniels or an AJ Styles, and Kevin started getting booked against all of these big names because everybody wanted to match Kevin with somebody. So there was like Steve Corino against Kevin Steen, and Samoa Joe against Kevin Steen, and AJ Styles and XS against Kevin Steen and Christopher Daniels, and all all that. So it was really and then Generico was part of the mix as well. And in the fall of 2004, that's when they made their US debut in CZW alongside XS and Sexy Eddie. because you got to remember that in the summer of 2004, Sexy Eddie was doing the Tournament of Death in CZW, and he had a cut on his arm, and he was like pissing blood, like if it was like a fontaine. It was crazy. And I don't know what happened in his head, but he did a stunt and started to flex his arm and drinking his own blood. I mean, if it was today, it would have been like viral, but it was viral for its day. And CZW wanted to bring back Eddie, and they wanted, three other guys from the IWS to come with and do a match. And my gosh, it was CZW's match of the year that year. So, and in that on that show, Super Dragon was there, and Super Dragon was also there in Jersey All Pro the weekend after, and Kevin and Generico was there as well, and I think Beef and Eddie too. And then he spoke to Kevin and Generico and was like, "Hey, would you like to come to PWG?" And they were supposed to tag together, but something happened with the team they were going to face, and they ended up working another. And that's when it started. And PWG was really important for them, because when the first time they got to Ring of Honor didn't work, they went back to PWG and really made a name for themselves even more. After the first stint in Ring of Honor, that's exactly what allowed them to go back to Ring of Honor a few years after. So, but yeah, I mean, depending on what you considered recognized and everything, I mean, the indie people knew about them before the newsletter maybe started talking about them.
Yeah, and that was that was so much of the game at this point. Like you remember, like this is 2004, 2005. Facebook is not really a thing. This is pre-Twitter. It was trying to get notoriety for yourself so that we're going to fly you in, and hopefully you can make that back in tape sales for us, and being unique in how you could create buzz for yourself, whether it be online or just, names getting around and getting in front of the right eyeballs. But it was a totally different game. Plus you had the caveat that here are Canadians that, it's tough for Canadians to get down to the US, and independent promotions that are going to go above and beyond to, for 2 flights from Canada. Like, you really had to earn your worth. It was a totally different landscape.
I remember Kevin telling me that him and Sami actually went to Ring of Honor to meet Gabe Sapolsky to bring an actual tape of their matches to be booked. It was at that time where tape, like VHS tape, still existed. That's why it was not even a DVD. It was really a tape. And yeah, it's harder for Canadians because of obviously, because in the US you're not supposed to work there without any visa or permit or anything. So the first, and maybe I shouldn't say that, but the first few years that Kevin and Generico work in the US, I mean, they were doing it like illegally, and like any other Canadian who tried to go to the US for the first few times. They were lucky because, if you remember, Mike Bailey didn't have that chance 6 years ago. Nicole Matthews down in BC didn't have that chance.
Right.
Probably the only time she crossed the border driving. So they were really lucky that, they were always able to go there. And I remember one story. I was with them. I was probably driving. Yeah, I was driving. So there's me. Listen to this. There's a car there's an Honda Civic, my Honda Civic, 4 doors. Okay, nothing special. So there's me, Frankie the Mobster, Kevin Owens, El Generico, and Lufisto, all in one car. We're going to Philly for CZW. And we at the borders, and I'm driving, and Sami is right behind me. So the border agent just asked us to open the windows, and he goes, "What's going to be? Where are you going? And why? What was the purpose?" And we always said that we're going to see a wrestling show, and that we're gonna just do the practice, and and just the kind of a seminar or something. Nothing that would mention that they were actually working or getting any kind of compensation for what they were doing. So it was training. It was always something along those lines. So we say that, and the guy looks at at Sami in the back, and he goes, "You're a wrestler?"
Wow.
and Sami just answered him, "Well, I'm trying to." And the agent started laughing, and he gave us all our passports back, and he was like, "Well, good luck with that," and he let us go. And I was like, "Rami, every time we're crossing the borders from now on, you have to sit behind me so the border agent can actually talk to you." Because
Wow.
I mean, he was not the biggest, right? And I had Frankie the mobster in the front seat next to me, who does look like
He
what
passes the airport test, as they say.
well, yeah, exactly. He looks like what a normal person would see in a professional wrestler. So it was just the funniest.
Wow. Well, maybe if that border agent has photographic memory, this weekend might be a wake up call. If
But
they're
you have
still
no
following.
idea how it was. It was just for us a relief when they started getting the right permits with Ring of Honor, because at the time they could actually not only cross the borders but actually bring merch with them and all that, and they were allowed to do so. So it was just it was a weight less on our shoulders, and no stress at all when we were crossing the borders. But hey, I mean, everybody was doing it, and everybody is still doing it. If you want to make a name in the States, that's the only way to actually start. There's no other
It's
way.
if it's really the only option. Like you're not going to create that interest for yourself staying in Canada. Like it's
And
just this country is not set up for that kind of independent scene. It's just like there's pockets of the country, but you want to break through. It's going to be with the bigger indies south of the border.
no one will pay a few $1,000s for a permit without you being a name of some sort. So it's a catch-22. You kind of go to the States, but no one will bring you in if you don't already go. And it's sad, but that's the reality of Canadian wrestling and Canadian wrestlers. Yeah.
It is. When you see Canadians on national television with big promotions, they have gone through the
Oh yeah.
grinder to get to that point in
Yeah,
their
I do
careers.
agree.
With Generico, I think it's this is almost like a post-territorial era of pro wrestling, but of the modern scene, I mean, he has such an eclectic, like you mentioned, the international experience, and I think from DDT and Dragon Gate mixed in with Chikara, like he learned from every corner of the world. That I think he took pieces from all of this, that these guys, when they showed up at the doorstep at a Ring of Honor or later a WWE, they had so much experience in all of these situations that they're so much more equipped to deal with whatever direction their character might go.
Yeah, they were able to work with different people, different workers, different bookers, learning what to do, what not to do. So when you spend 15 years on the indies, or 13, 14 years like him and Kevin did, you get to WWE or to NXT, and you already have a lifelong time of experience that someone who actually wasn't on the indie scene and just was brought in from football or any other sports, they actually don't have that experience, and you actually see this even more when people are actually leaving WWE. Because let's say for example, someone who's been on the indies forever, has a 3-4 year stint in WWE or NXT. When they go back to the indies, they know how it works, they know what to charge, they know all that. When someone like Braun Strowman or Nia Jax are going are leaving WWE, they've never done indies. They more often than not, they're going to overprice themselves because they don't know the market. They don't know. They think there's like these big superstars, and they can ask $20,000 for a booking, which is not the reality of independent wrestling. So you see also that when they go back to the indies, but yeah, I mean they come with a lot of experience working. And I mean, even Kevin said it in interviews that he really learned more about wrestling when he started working in the States and working people better than him and those Daniels and Styles and all those guys than what he did in training here. Even when he was the first few years when everybody wanted to book Kevin here, he said it himself. He became a much better wrestler by working those guys elsewhere around the world.
I want to ask about a match that you were there live for. It was a Final Battle 2012. It's the blow off between Steen and Generico with the ladder war, and it is Generico's send off as he is going off to the orphanage, and then in his wake would be his living half that would be going to WWE. What are you thinking on that night? Number one, I'm sure you're very proud of these two. They're headlining a major ROH show, but are you looking at this as this is Generico's ticket to the next level, or are you believing that there's a very good chance he'll be back here in a couple of years' time? What are you thinking at that point where this is not the current like even NXT of a few years later where that pathway was a bit clearer? Like this was the great unknown of WWE and someone of his stature.
I actually was thinking I couldn't still believe it. It was like a few years before that, Kevin and Sami would have never gotten a look.
No.
And now here he is having a WWE contract. And it was funny because he was actually telling us about how it was and how he couldn't even believe himself when he got the contract signed by Paul Levesque, and that he had to put his own signature on that. It was still crazy for him, and it was telling us about how it happened and everything that went on, and all that. So it was a fun ride going to, I think it was New York for Final Battle. So it was a very fun ride, and I was like, well, this is kind of the end of an era, and we'll never see El Generico against Kevin Steen anymore. So it was kind of sad in a way, because I've been with those guys, traveling with those two and talking to them all the time, and I've been there for I've said it many times, but I've seen them in front of 90 people in pool like very shitty bars in Montreal, and I've seen them at that point, main eventing Ring of Honor, and it was just like when he made it, it was like, okay, maybe one of us has, and I don't want to include myself in this. It was more about the workers, and it was more about him and Kevin, but it was like, okay, finally one of them is making it, and then I think Kevin really realized, okay, there's a good chance I might be the next one. Because before that, you never know. Because they didn't have the look, they didn't have the size that WWE was looking at the time. And that was December of 2012. And Kevin got signed. Well, he made his debut in August. He got signed a few months earlier than that. So maybe, 2 years and a half or something. After that, Kevin got signed, but at the time I remember thinking that it was really like the end of an era and nothing would be the same anymore with only one of them on the indies. And I was just, from that point on, I was just rooting for Kevin to be signed as well.
What did you think about your first impressions of him unmasked and with the new name in NXT?
Well, unmasked, I wasn't unfamiliar with him without a mask. I've seen him more times than not without a mask, and I've seen him wrestle without a mask. So I knew ahead of time that he wouldn't go for a mask thing. that was clear in his head, and I think in Hunter's head as well.
Mhm.
The name is always a long process and a weird process. So a lot of name has been, thrown out, and I used to have like a short list of other names that they were thinking about. I don't have it anymore, I think, but I mean, Sammy, Rami was like close enough that it was like, okay, that's cool, and Zayn, I didn't mind. Actually, I didn't mind. It was like SZ. There was something there, Styles, with on his trunks or something. So there was something to do that. I mean, it's a catchy name, not really hard to remember. So I was fine with. I remember seeing the other names like, okay, this one is much better.
We won't keep you too much longer, Pat. This has been excellent to just kind of go through the whole chronology here. But when it comes to Sami's promos, like where have you seen that evolution over the years? Was there a certain turning point that you sensed where he really started to find his voice?
That has to be in WWE though, because on the Indies, because of the Generico gimmick,
Sure.
he was almost never talking. I remember him talking, years ago when he started, and with those Stevie McFly and Big Larry thing, but it was never to the level of what he's doing right now. And I think he has done his best work on the mic in the past year, because he was able maybe to improvise more, to talk from, I don't want to say from the heart, but from what he thinks should be said in this particular angle. He wasn't reading. At no point I felt like he was reading some kind of a script, So I think he had more input in what he could actually say. That's only my opinion. I don't want to say that he had more input, but I do believe that he had more input in all that, and it kind of showed in the way that he handled the promos, and the way he act. I always knew that he was a great actor, that he was, because he had done improv in Montreal, and I knew that he could be quick-witted, and he could do a lot of stuff in those regards. But there was definitely probably it's what he was already a great wrestler when he started on NXT, but the promos are probably what he improved the most in the past 10 years, and to the point that now he has to be considered as one of the very good talkers in the industry. I mean, this promo with Cody Rhodes, I mean, if you didn't get goosebumps, you're I mean, I don't know what you're made of, because even I did get goosebumps, so.
And how fast he's transitioned from sort of being like the comedic sidekick of the Bloodline, and now he's this serious, zoned-in character that, it has a very like Mick Foley kind of vibe to it as well, and he's made that transition seamlessly. Like, no one's looking at him waiting for a punchline or doing the funny dancing. It's just, he is, like, at the snap of the fingers, he has adjusted into this very serious threat for the title on Saturday, and it has created like a ton of interest for this match Saturday, and where you go here. Like, you can see what the plan is for WrestleMania, but you can also see the performances. Like, to me, you have two incredible options here in Cody and Sami, and I don't think there's a right and a wrong, but it adds so much more intrigue to this match on Saturday, and gives us some insight into how Paul Levesque is going to handle this, because he's sitting on two incredibly hot baby faces.
I just want to go back to one thing you said. I don't think that what we are seeing now, it was what was planned at the beginning with Sami being in the Bloodline.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, we talk about how he decided to embrace the El Generico gimmick and make it work. It wasn't the first time that in his career that he had to be in a situation where he kind of had to make it work, and that's what he did. His talent spoke when he started, being involved in the Bloodline, and then it really caught on with the fans, and we are what where we at this point in time. Who would have thought 6 months ago that Sami Zayn would have been the biggest babyface in the company? I mean, that's crazy when you think of it. And yeah, Levesque has two very good options, but you know, as much as I would like to see Sami Zayn beat Roman Reigns in Montreal, I mean Cody, I mean fits more the kind of champion they're looking for, the type of people that can actually beat Roman Reigns. So I still believe that we won't see Sammy winning in Montreal, and I honestly have no clue what's going to happen.
Mhm.
I don't ask questions. I don't want to know. I don't want to put these guys in a bad situation or anything. But if the rumors are true, John, I mean they're going for the title belts, the tag team belts, and in at WrestleMania against the Usos. And if they win the belts at WrestleMania, I mean that's something to be proud of too. You know, I mean,
Which is big enough to headline the first night. Like that
oh,
to me is the number
definitely.
2 match of the weekend for WWE.
I do agree, especially since they never main evented. I mean, I don't want to say ever, but in a very long time. I mean, when is the last time did it ever happen? A WrestleMania main event headlined by a tag team match?
Not
I
since the
mean,
first one. Yeah.
WrestleMania 1, yeah,
Yeah.
that's the one. So I mean, if there is one tag team match that can actually main event the first night, it's this match this year. So that's not too shabby, when you think about it. But even if he loses on Saturday, Montreal will be such an amazing crowd for him, and it should feel special for anyone in attendance, but also watching at home. I know how my people are, and they're gonna be rooting for Sammy like no one before, and I really expect something very, very cool Friday and Saturday. But hey, some people will get upset about Sammy not winning, but I just want something that will be logic and that will make at the end of the evening, I want Sammy to be in the ring, to be able to say a few words to the crowd after, and after the pay-per-view, and we'll see. But I'm
If you have
expecting
that closing shot, like regardless of the outcome of like Sammy and Kevin embracing in the ring
exactly.
and setting their path for Mania, that crowd's leaving
Exactly.
very happy. I think at the end,
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
that
People
is the
will
key.
forget that Sammy hasn't won the title, and they'll move on to what they want to build for WrestleMania.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing you this weekend, Pat. This was a show
Likewise.
I definitely want to see in person, and we want to let everybody know what you and your co-host Kevin Raphael are doing on Saturday. You guys are doing a kind of a tailgate party at Beer Market. So let those that are in Montreal know where they can stop by and catch you guys.
Yeah, it's on at the Beer Market on René Lévesque Street, 1221 René Lévesque West. It's like 3 minutes walking from the Bell Center, so that's really, really near. It starts at 3:30 p.m. It's a live podcast that me and Kevin are doing. It's Les Antipodes de la Lutte, which is pretty much wrestling's opposites, if you want to have a quick translation. So it's our regular podcast that we bring for the first time in Montreal in front of a live crowd. And yeah, I mean, this is going to be a very cool afternoon, and if you have nothing to do, if you're in town for 2 nights and you have nothing to do at afternoon of Saturday, well, pass by. Doors open at 3 p.m. It should be ending by 5, so people will have time to have a bite or have a drink prior to going to the Bell Center. So no worries there. We won't you won't miss the Elimination Chamber.
Yes, a perfect day. You can go to Beer Market with Pat and Kevin, take an Elimination Chamber, and then how late is Electric Avenue open? Late on a Saturday night. I mean, that to
It
me
closes
is.
at 3 a.m.
I mean,
And
your weekend is set, Pat.
the Bell Center is probably, I don't know, 10, 12 minutes walking from the Electric Avenue. You've been there, John?
I have been, in fact, yes. So there you have it. Looking forward to seeing you, Pat. You can catch all of his work, TVA Sports, the podcast with Kevin, and do check out all of his fine books. Andre the Giant, Mad Dog Vachon, Mad Dogs, Midgets, and Screwjobs, the history of women's wrestling. He's got books on hockey out there. I mean, a renaissance man. This
I don't
Pat
want to
Laprade.
spoil. I don't want to spoil anything, but maybe there's going to be some news about a new wrestling book in very very soon. So I'll let you know when I can actually talk more about it.
The man is also a great promoter to just keep you guessing with a little dangle there at the end of things. Pat Laprade on Twitter, check them all out, and we will be seeing you this weekend, Pat. So for Pat, I am John Pollock, and thank you for tuning in to our special look at the story of Stevie McFly.